Anna Marie Cox, and having children won't make you immortal.
It will make you very tired, though, just to be clear. Hi, I'm Daniel Dresner. How much did you read in my murk?
Welcome to Space the Nation, where we look at science fiction through the lens of
global warming,
political science, and social science. I guess that's our sort of general mix.
Yes. If you sense a slight looseness in this particular episode, there's a reason for that, which is Anna and I are flying blind. We do not have a script for this one. And the reason we don't have a script for this one is because we're closing out Hot Sci-Fi Summer with a sort of wrap-up episode of a variety of things that we have been watching and or reading, but have not had time to actually get into a full episode.
Dan, I'm looking at this list. We didn't read anything.
We read stuff. We just don't want to talk to them. They don't need to hear the stuff we've been reading. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
We're reading deep stuff.
Yeah. This is what we did on our summer vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to start from stuff we didn't like and didn't finish.
Yes. Well, I finished. I fell on my sword for finishing it, but right.
Yeah. Stuff we didn't like to stuff that we really liked. In fact, something that I got turned around on that Dan tried to get me into, and I finally gave it more of a chance and fell in love. In fact, binged the whole 3 seasons.
Oh, this is great. Now I have hope for The Good Place. Okay, excellent.
Yeah. So let us not delay our gratification or getting to it after we talk about the bad stuff, I guess. We're delaying gratification. We are. Well,
also, let's face it, it's going to be a little fun to rip some of these things to shreds. So that's,
Okay.
That's
all right.
All right. So why don't we start with Marvel's Secret Invasion, which I think it would safe to say we did not enjoy. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, you did not enjoy it so much that you gave up after the first episode.
Yeah, I would say we could start with it because that's all I did.
Yeah,
I started with it, and then I gave up on it. I mean, it just was already seemed pointless, and all these wonderful actors,
let me put it this way.
Fantastic character actors.
Yes.
And I think Olivia Colman gets, people have pointed to her performance as being particularly good, even.
She is legitimately good in her role as basically sort of an MI5 person who is dealing with it. But I want to go on a rant here a little bit on it, because it wasn't just that I thought this show was bad. This show made me actively angry for a variety of reasons. The first is, as you said, this is a fantastic cast, right? Just throwing whatever it is out the window. If I told you I had something I was producing with Olivia Colman, Emily Clark, Ben Mendelsohn, Samuel L. Jackson, Kobe Smulders, Don Cheadle, Martin Freeman, this is not
all-star.
Yeah, this is a pretty good cast. Christopher McDonald has a minor cameo in it, a small role. There are others who have very small roles, really good actors. And furthermore, if you had then told me, we're not just going to make something, what we're going to do is put a Jean Le Carré style moody spy thriller, but set it in the MCU. Again, I'm sold on that, because that's a genre they haven't.
Sort of like Andor does,
to Star Wars, right?
Or, to Star Wars. This is going to be that.
That would be perfect, because they haven't really done that. They've done a lot of different genres, but that's sort of one they haven't done. And that is clearly the mood they are going for. Which is fine, except that this is the worst fucking thing that has been written, I think, since Iron Fist. Since Marvel's Iron Fist. Yeah, no, it's that bad. Everything else we've watched, even in Phase 4, I think has had some redeeming value. The only thing of redeeming value in this show is Olivia Colman. She's fantastic in it. She really is.
This is sort of an interesting opportunity to talk about why Marvel tends to be okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's a good point.
It's because they tend to just take a really consumer product approach to this stuff. Mm-hmm. It's going to be basically good. It's going to be a quarter pounder.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes
there's a high floor. Right. There's a high floor.
Sometimes, right. There's a high floor. Sometimes you get something amazing.
Right. Sometimes you get a Black Panther or, Thor Ragnarok or something like that. Sometimes you get something amazing. You're not always going to get that. But what you're generally, as you say, like a McDonald's, going in, you're probably going to get something of somewhat minimal quality. And this is not that. This is worse.
It was weird too, because even just the one episode I saw, the performances are fine.
Right. Yeah.
it's just, it feels leaden. I've never seen a show that more appropriately seems to embody that word, leaden.
I think part of it might have been that this was a genre where you got to have crackerjack writing to pull off, because by definition, it's a dour genre, right? Like, these are all characters that are beaten down mostly because of the cost of waging, this sort of intelligence / counterintelligence operations. It makes sense. And that's entirely fair. That's consistent with the characters, but it doesn't know what to do with that. And go ahead.
Do you think you could call this the McRib of Marvel movies?
That's an insult to McRib. Product? I actually like McRib.
Well, I'm just thinking like it's pre-processed, just like it looks sort of like the thing it's supposed to be, right?
But people actually
it into the shape.
People actually like the McRib. I think this is more like...
I know, but I think people like the McRib ironically. And I don't think anyone actually likes the McRib. I like my metaphor here because I do think...
I'm not sure that's true, Anna, but okay, go ahead.
They've pressed this into the shape of a spy thriller. Right?
Yes.
They've taken these components and and they've drowned it in sauce.
Right.
And it's still only vaguely edible.
But so I would go further than that, which is the reason there are a couple of reasons this doesn't work. And I think they point to problems at the MCU, how the MCU is good and how the MCU is bad. The MCU works if they embrace the genre and figure out how to fit it into a Marvel universe. Right. This thing embraces the genre. It has no idea how to connect it to Marvel. And indeed, there's an even bigger problem with that, which is the other thing that the MCU has done incredibly well is demonstrate the sort of interconnections all of these different things have. It always suggests there's a wider universe out there. And it also pays legitimate attention to its own history. This show doesn't do that. So, like, the premise of this show... spoiler alert, is that it turns out that there are about 1 million Skrulls, living on planet Earth that Nick Fury didn't know about, that his friend, I think Skolos, I want to say, I can't remember, the Ben Mendelsohn character, brought in and didn't tell him. And the premise is that once people find out about that, oh my God, they're going to flip out, aliens among us, which raises the super awkward question of, again, in the world of the MCU, Earth has been aware of aliens for at least a decade.
They almost lost New York.
And furthermore, they've welcomed other aliens. Like, there's new Asgard on Earth. So,
And, half the world disappeared.
Right.
I think people are able to accept the extraordinary. We have sort of...
So actually,
come to a place.
I would have been okay.
We can believe the unbelievable at this point.
I would have been okay if they had suggested Earth's been through a lot with the blip and so on and so forth. This news could actually cause people to, act in even weirder ways. That would have been fine. They don't do that. They don't even talk about that. Again, that was, and then there's other reveals. Like, we find out that Rhodey, was a Skrull. Although he is, by the way, again, spoiler alert, the real Rhodey is alive and he's freed at the very end of it. So what we don't know is how long he was a Skrull. By the way, the Martin Freeman character, the CIA officer Everett, also a Skrull. We don't know how long that's happened either. There's no attempt to sort of connect it to everything else, which is frustrating. And then the other needless to say, the other frustrating thing is that, again, the plotting is just bad. Nick Fury shows up at various times and you're wondering how the hell he's doing this and what is actually going on. And I think the thing that I'm actually most upset about is they kill Maria Hill. Kobe Smulders is actually dead at the end of this. And she was killed for
first.
First, at the first episode. And this is a character who's been around for 10 years. Kobe Smulders has imbued her with, you care about her. It's meaningful that she dies, but she dies in this dreck. It's it's just a wasted death, I guess would be the way to put it. And then the weird thing is that the show then goes on to not take any other death seriously because you keep thinking characters have died and then they wind up getting resurrected. And so it's just bad. And by the way, the one thing I will give the show credit for is that it ends on a very ugly note because it ends in this, the revelation is, oh, there are these Skrulls out there. Everyone knows about it. And you see mobs of people killing people that turn out to be Skrulls, but then killing people that they thought were Skrulls that aren't. So it makes it clear this is an ugly outcome, but it doesn't know what to do with that. So what I find infuriating is that clearly this show was given somewhat greater license to do a more mature themed episode or more mature themed show, and it just shit the bed. There's no other way to put it. That's what they wound up doing.
Yeah, I'm trying to sort of go back to like what was the mistake here in terms of the consumer product, and I wonder. I still like my McRib analogy, in that they didn't know what they thought they knew what they were doing. They thought they knew the product they were developing.
Yeah,
but they only knew it in this like vague form, like didn't understand the real nitty gritty of it. Whereas like when something is really good, I mean, that's when you get like a direct, for one thing, I think part of it has to do with it being a TV show. I think you need a really sure hand.
Yeah.
Much like what's his face in Andor.
Tony Gilroy
in Andor. Yeah. I mean, because if you look at the best of the MCU, it's Ryan Coogler, it's Taika
Waititi.
Taika Waititi.
Sure.
Him.
Yeah. Or even the Russo brothers. The Russo brothers know what they're doing with this, you know.
I would say they're a little workmanlike, but like the really good stuff has like a really sure hand.
Right.
It has someone and they have a vision. Yeah. And like I feel like this is the mantra, the thing that the years that we've been doing this show, I feel like the one thing that I have discovered that I didn't know how much I appreciated before is what passion counts for in a project. And is what vision and passion counts for.
And that was frustrating. There is no I think that's the other problem. There's no passion in this. Some of the other Phase 4 shows, you know, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, or Ms. Marvel, or even I
think Moon Knight had a certain passion to it. Yeah.
But like those, like there are some criticisms you can throw at those. But those were good shows where you got the sense that whoever the showrunner was had a grasp of what they were going for, and there was general competency as well as some like delightful moments and so on and so forth. This has none of that. And again, it's just the only bright spot in this show is Olivia Colman. That's there is a final fight that's mildly interesting. It's the one actually this show is interesting also because there's not a ton of special effects either, which was appropriate for what they're doing, but like it just. I think the thing that makes me annoyed is not just that it was a wasted opportunity. And it does seem emblematic of where Marvel has been recently, where it's like they're running a little on autopilot and they've forgotten what made them good.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about our Marvel.
Yeah.
Which brings us actually to the next thing on our list in a way, which is Flash.
The Flash, yes. Now,
if you're a little worried about Marvel, you should be a lot worried about the DCU.
Right. So now I'm going to confess I have not seen The Flash. You, Anna, saw The Flash. Right. I believe it just came out potentially, or was about to come out on Max. So hopefully our listeners will have a chance to watch it.
It came out right after the strike started because they couldn't do any publicity for it, which is another reason why it tanked. Although it's probably going to tank anyway because Ezra Miller's more than problematic. I mean, I think.
Oh, has there been a problem with Ezra Miller? I wasn't aware.
I mean, I don't want to talk too much about that because I think it's a sad story.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that he's someone who I genuinely have some empathy for and wish the best to. And I've probably said it on this show, but like the toughest people to save from like their own demons are rich, famous men. In particular, because people just keep letting them do stuff. I think always going to be people who let them do stuff.
Look this way, there's an interesting parallel here to Robert Downey Jr. actually, because you can argue the MCU is not the MCU without Robert Downey Jr. And it took 2-3 decades for Robert Downey Jr. to finally get his shit together. This is a deeply tortured human being who finally managed to write himself. And I would argue, I agree with you in the following sense. Ezra Miller is a talented actor. I've seen him in enough stuff.
He's so good.
He's good in a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And so I hope he gets the treatment and help he needs because we would all be better for it if he's actually a working actor. But that said, he's done some bad shit and needs to get his head on straight.
Right. But to talk about the Flash.
Yeah. Okay.
You can't talk about Flash without talking about him a little bit, obviously, because he makes it. Mm-hmm. He's incredible. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. I didn't read anything about it that made a big deal about this, but I think it's a big deal, which is, he plays two characters. Mm-hmm. And I never thought about that the entire movie.
That is a credit to acting. Like, yeah. Yeah.
I never thought about, he must be talking to himself. Like they're putting this scene together in a way that he's talking to himself.
But that's also, that's good. Like also that's great. That's not just great acting. It's great non-showy acting. Because sometimes you see something, you're like, wow, they're really acting. And like, that's actually not the best impulse to have sometimes, because you just want to sort of watch the performance rather than sort of notice it. And so that's interesting that he's good enough to do that.
I also appreciated that the DCU's thing is supposed to be it's darker, right?
Yeah,
but sometimes it's just silly. Like when we've talked about any Batman movie is kind of silly. Like I don't know if I like some of the Batman movies, but I find their self-seriousness, like I never quite
buy it.
Never quite get there with it. There's something deeply silly about Batman, and we've talked about it, which is that if you have that kind of money, you should do better than beating up random criminals.
Be a better philanthropist, Bruce. Come on, man.
That is the fundamental problem with Batman, is that he's going about this all wrong. So The Flash has a cool darkness to it, I would say. Ezra Miller's incredible, and it just sort of it doesn't resolve itself in a way that's very satisfying. It does this weird shtick where you see all the different versions of every DC universe. Like they do, you see a CGI version of Nick Cage.
Yeah, I heard that.
Superman.
Yeah.
Which, it's like fan service, and fan service can be okay. Yeah. Except one of the things I kind of liked about the movie was like, it was pretty like
dark,
grim. Yeah. I mean, it had some silliness too, but there were stakes. Even though it's an alternate universe.
Well, this is based on the Flashpoint paradox, right? I think that was that's the sort of well-known epic sort of comic run that this is based on.
Oh, and I gotta say, and Michael Keaton is in me. I loved seeing him don the Bat costume.
That's good. So no, I'm gonna watch it if for no other reason, just to see Keaton again as the Batman. Yeah. That's good.
And I want to tell people about Ezra Miller. This is another thing very important to say. If you haven't seen We Need to Talk About Kevin, that is one of the most disturbing movies out there.
Oh, I'm never going to watch that. Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, parents.
This is a non-trigger warning. Parents should never watch that film. There are like Anna. I know you're talking about, like, you were joking at the opening about children and mortality. There is something about becoming a parent where there are certain films I will never watch because I don't like. There was a movie that came out. I think it was Denis Villeneuve's first film, Prisoners, about missing children.
Oh, I won't see that either.
Yeah, no.
That actually,
Nope, forget it. Yeah.
I don't think I would have watched We Need to Talk About Kevin if I had known how good it was going to be. Like, I knew the sort of general, plot, and it's, I think, maybe spoiler, I don't think so. It's about a school shooter. It's about a young man who turns into a school killer.
And his parents, correct? Yeah, I mean, it's mostly...
And his parents. Yeah. And Tilda Swinton is his mom, and it's just God, it's good. It's just it is so disturbing, but the entire time it's not showy either. You're just feeling it.
Yeah.
With them, and Tilda Swinton especially. God. Anyway, let's move on.
Okay.
Dan, wait,
hold on. Before we close, okay. I do want to ask: would you recommend people watch it or not? Like,
If you've already subscribed to Max,
there we go.
Like if you're not giving more money in that direction, I think it's not a laundry folder because it actually takes a little bit of like
attention. You need
attention. But I enjoyed it.
Okay.
I found it diverting. It did not get good reviews, but like I said, I think the thing about it is just Ezra Miller's like cool to watch, and I guess the plot is stolen from the Flashpoint paradox.
Well, it's stolen.
But it's a cool plot.
It's adapted. I mean,
it's stolen. Yeah. It's adapted. I mean, so it's not like a new
right. Yeah. But it's right. There's a reason they adapted that plot. It's a good plot.
It's a cool plot. See, it's like a good plot.
There's an animated.
It's interesting.
There is an animated version of this film called. There's an animated DC film called The Flashpoint Paradox, by the way. So just also, something.
Oh, maybe I'll watch that.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. Okay, so like medium, thumb in the middle.
Okay.
Like no thumb up, no thumb down. Just like.
All right. Next,
catch it if you want.
Next on our steadily upward trajectory of crap is Ahsoka, which is also Disney Plus.
Skipped it entirely. So Dan, what do you got to say?
I don't have to say much because I have not watched much of it, but I will say three things about it. The first is that
four.
Three.
Nope, wait.
5, 7. Okay. No. One of them will just be in R2D2 voice. No. All right. So the first thing is that I read one review, like it was a headline thing that made me think, oh, I'm not going to like this because someone literally described it as the anti-Andor. And I'm like,
Ooh.
no, I want more Andor. Don't tell me it's the opposite of that. That's not promising. And so having watched a little bit of it, I see where they're going with that, in that the great thing about Andor, and the reason that I think Tony Gilroy, has actually worked in terms of Star Wars, and in some ways this connects back to our discussion of the MCU, is that Tony Gilroy actually doesn't give a fuck about Star Wars. He really doesn't. He's been very blatant about that.
Yeah.
Now, you obviously need to make sure he doesn't, ridiculously violate canon or anything like that. I mean, I like the universe enough so that you want to make sure he doesn't do ridiculous stuff. So you need a couple people minding him. But this allowed him to do things that I think, other Star Wars showrunners or producers or directors might have been too slavishly devoted to the canon.
Sacred cows for Tony Gilroy.
As near as I can figure out, Ahsoka is nothing but sacred cows. Is the basic problem. In that way, it is the anti-Andor because, it follows a character, Ahsoka Tano, who, for those who have watched the animated shows, particularly Clone Wars and I think Rebels, this is a character that was in those animated shows. She's played by Rosario Dawson. We've seen her in live action before in The Mandalorian and in the Book of Boba Fett in one episode apiece. And she seems to be doing perfectly fine. But I will say, first of all, I laughed not in a good way at the beginning of the show because the show opens with what should be a traditional Star Wars crawl, but instead it's exposition going up the screen. And it's written, it is clear. I think I have to assume that whoever did this wrote it thinking, oh yeah, we're totally going to get to do the classic Star Wars, episode whatever, Ahsoka. And they're like, no, you're not going to get to do that. But they kept the crawl. And the crawl includes other thing. The MacGuffin, at least in the first episode, is, I swear to God, a fucking map, Anna. Because that's never been done in a Star Wars thing.
Or ever.
Right. And so I'm like, ugh. And that was my reaction upon watching the first parts of it, which is just that, okay, you're going to the exact same goddamn well again. And I have no doubt that there's going to be some stuff that's good in it, particularly for those I suspect who did watch those animated shows, because really you're seeing all these characters come to life. So it's got a great cast. Beyond Rosario Dawson, there's Ray Stevenson, there's Natasha Liu Bordizzo as Sabine Wren, Mary Elizabeth Winstead as a rebel general, and Anna. Do you want to also know who's in it?
I think you're going to tell me.
Wes Chatham. Your boyfriend. Yes. So maybe you should watch this.
Wow. Haven't seen that boyfriend in a while.
I know. So good for Wes Chatham. Yeah. Welcome back to the genre. And look, maybe this will turn out better, but I have to say, of the half, the bits I watched of the first episode, it kind of seems like the thing it most reminds me of is The Force Awakens. which is not all bad. I actually like the first half of Force Awakens, but unfortunately it reminds me of the not good part of The Force Awakens, where it's they're doing everything possible to tie it into the larger, canon, and to some extent sacrificing things like character and, interesting themes. So maybe this has potential, and I think the first two episodes of this recording, there are only 2 episodes out, so maybe it will improve. But my hunch is that it really is going to be the anti-Andor, and that is unfortunate for everyone concerned.
It's funny. I actually just don't. I am a child of the original Star Wars movies.
As am I. Yes, we're locked in there.
Yeah, and nothing beyond that first trilogy has ever meant as much to me, and
even Andor
never. Oh, okay. Andor's the exception.
Okay.
Andor would be the exception. I mean, I've enjoyed other stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Rogue One was good.
But yeah, sure. But it doesn't feel the same to me. And I know this is there are folks on our Discord that are hardcore extended universe.
Well, let me put it this way. I think the answer to the question of should you watch this, I honestly think in part is generational, which is, Anna, you and I are Gen X. As you say, we grew up in the original trilogy, which was magical in a variety of ways. And they've occasionally managed to do other things that are interesting. I think we like Andor for very different reasons, though, from liking the original trilogy.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I would say that it's still very Gen X-y,
Yeah.
and that
Oh,
it's
yeah.
super fucking cynical.
Right. Yeah. But like the point is,
it is just a different. It's just different.
It's a whole different vibe from the original trilogy.
To be the original trilogy,
right? And it still fits in with the larger universe, which is great. But like, it's a very different vibe. This is something that is clearly trying to evoke, for lack of a way of putting it, the vibe of the animated shows and of the Clone Wars, which have their fans, and I suspect millennials and maybe even Gen Z will like this better than older folk like you and I. And I'm honestly curious on the Discord if people like this. I want to know. I want them to out their ages, because I actually think that might be the divide on this one, which is people who grew up on these characters in animated form might enjoy this more than you or I did, because I wasn't watching Clone Wars when it first came out, because I'm a goddamn adult.
Right. I mean, I was just gonna say, like, I've never actually really thought about it this way, because like my experience of Star Wars has been so much like, all right, well, there's the original trilogy and then everything after that. Right. That's what it is. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. Like, there's like whole generation for whom the first thing they saw were the animated series. Right.
And by the way, I just want to take a quick moment now to once again curse out my wife for making me, when my children were young, and like I like, one of the things I was looking forward to when my children were young was introducing them to Star Wars. This is something as a parent, like there are certain cultural things you love. You're just like, oh, they're going to love this, like Princess Bride or Monty Python or so on and so forth. And so with Star Wars, got my son hooked on it, and he liked the original trilogy and so on and so forth. My daughter was getting older, and she originally wasn't a keen fan of it. And I was actually able to convince her, okay, look, let's watch the first 20 minutes of Star Wars. If you don't like it, I'll turn it off forever and we don't have to talk about it. And she was old enough so that after 20 minutes, she was into it. She's like, okay, I want to watch more. We watched the first half of the Star Wars, then she had to go to bed. And then I had to go travel for a conference. And when I came back, my wife had shown her the first trilogy, the original trilogy, which she was really into. But then she wanted to watch more. So I had to watch the prequel fucking trilogy with her. And that's love, okay? That is love. And my poor daughter, who perfectly liked, things like Jar Jar Binks, because she was young enough to, to think that. And and I'm watching it and thinking, oh, this was actually worse than I remembered it, motherfuckers. You goddamn George fucking Lucas.
I remember being upset at the theater. This is apparently a common Gen X thing.
Oh, yeah. No.
We remember watching it and being like, fuck you, George Lucas.
Oh, no. Absolute.
Adults have disappointed. Boomers have disappointed us again.
You thought Gen Xers were cynical before the Phantom Menace came out? Oh, no. That was like, that's where we became hardcore cynical. Like, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
But,
totally.
So my point is, my recommendation for Ahsoka is if...
It wasn't the Iran-Contra...
No, not Iran Contra. No, not that. Not impeachment of Bill Clinton. None of that stuff. No. It was without question the Phantom Menace. That was an important touchstone. Okay, so anyway, my recommendation is that if you grew up on the original trilogy, I don't necessarily recommend you watch this, but if you liked the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, go to town. You probably enjoy it. All right, Anna. What are we
moving on?
Moving on,
Dan.
Next is Foundation, season 2 on Apple. Now, you might be a little further along than I am, because I think I've only watched the first 5 episodes of this season so far.
There is a one out today that I have not seen.
Okay.
Episode 7.
Okay. All right. So you're a little further along than I am.
A little further ahead. I think we can safely say that the books are just in the rearview mirror.
And
shredded.
Thank you, David Goyer, for that choice. I'm not sure this is good, but definitely I do not need to see a filmed version of Asimov's book. No.
That's right. Nope. They're just, it's just like they tore him up, threw him in the air. Yeah. I kind of feel bad. I do watch, I think the channel that I watch the recaps on is Pete Peppers' channel. New Rockstars doesn't do Foundation recaps, which I'm kind of sad about that, because I'm a fan of their recaps of other things.
Okay.
But clearly Pete Peppers is a big fan of the books, and he'll do little book comparisons.
Oh God! Well, now he must be tearing his hair out at this point.
No, I think he's whatever. He's a good sport.
Okay,
he likes genres. Also, he's got a channel to sell stuff. So he's got I think there's a limit on how much you can hate things once you've gone that direction. He'll just be like, well, book readers will recognize this name. Book readers will recognize this name.
You'll recognize the name, the character. Who knows? But you'll recognize the name.
Yeah. That's the clear implication. Sometimes he just says it is like, well, these are little Easter eggs for the book readers that we recognize these names. And some of them are good names. Hobar Mallow.
Hobar Mallow, yes, name. That is a good name.
Love that.
Is that from one of the later books? Because I couldn't remember if that was from.
I believe it is. Yeah. I read the first one, and then I think I started the second one. And before I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, everyone is wrong. These are not good.
Yes, so that frankly what I felt like watching Secret Invasion. So okay, good. Yeah.
Everyone is
wrong.
Okay, but so what do I think about this season though? I mean I enjoyed the first season. Like, I think a little more than you. It's not great, but there's good performances, and there's Lee Pace. Like, it's just
Lee Pace as Cleon, or as Day. I think it would be the better way to put it.
As Day, and also I think the other two Cleons are good too, although they're not Lee Pace. I mean, and it's beautiful. Like, Apple has just cornered the market on
beautiful sci-fi,
certain look to sci-fi that other networks don't have. It's very.
Actually, this is let me put it this way.
The colors are really great. I don't know if it's just like, I don't know what they're doing.
I will say Andor. This is another area where Andor, I think, Andor is the show that actually comes closest to this in terms of, like, again, Tony Gilroy was smart. He uses mostly physical, like, real landscapes, and that works incredibly well for Andor. And I think that's mostly true for Foundation as well. And that I agree with you. The best thing about the first season was the cinematography. There's some just gorgeous shots. This season is Again, I have mixed feelings about it. How would I put this? It's goofy in some ways. Like,
and I think it's almost self-consciously goofy.
Yeah, like it. The thing that struck me, the goofiest moment by far. Did you see? I'm sure you remember this. Is when there's a scene in I think the 4th or 5th episode where Day is supposed to be bedding his fiance. And the fiance is trying to get in there because she wants to see the assassination attempt that happened in the first episode. And we learn that among other things, Day has been sleeping with the robot Demerzel. They've just been banging on a regular basis, apparently.
Yep.
And as Demerzel, encourages him, it's like, it's okay, you're going to be fine.
I know. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Demerzel is Day is understandably nervous because, like, he's never
had sex with anyone else.
Right. Exactly.
So he's only had sex with his former wet nurse or whatever, which is,
just weird.
Fine.
Yeah. So Demerzel, let's just say, gets him all hot up and bothered, which is fine. And then as she's leaving, gives a little thumbs up to Day, which is like, I honestly want to know.
It's not a thumbs up, it's a fist pump.
Oh, is it a fist? I thought it was a thumbs up. All I know is it is the most absurd gesture. Yeah. It's the most absurd fucking gesture. And there's part of me that wondered if the actress did it as sort of like going for the blooper reel. And they were like, no, let's use this. That's great. But that was never been in the first season. And that would certainly never have been an Asimov's thing.
No. And it does sort of raise this interesting point, which, you don't think about a lot, because I think most sci-fi kind of either consciously incorporates, the gestures and aphorisms of our modern times as just like, that's just people still say
talk like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
People still give thumbs up. People still whatever. Mm-hmm. The Foundation hasn't done that.
Right.
Right? Like, they don't use the vernacular of our Earth time. But apparently people still give fist pumps, which I don't know. Like, that, it is a little weird. I thought that also the stuff with Harry, like when he suddenly is like,
oh, he's flashing blood
physical again. Yeah. And like, I thought that was kind of like, oh, I guess they're just gonna do it.
Also really goofy.
And they almost seem to acknowledge it. Like, Harry's like, yeah, I don't know either.
Let me this way.
Here I am.
The way I would put it is the show is at least self-conscious about the fact of, we're really, we really like Jared Harris, okay? You really like Jared Harris. You want him on the goddamn show. Stop your fucking complaining, okay? Like, that's pretty much the attitude they seem to have on that point.
Yeah, but that's the kind of fan service I can live with. I like that. Sure. Also, again, Lee Pace.
Lee Pace is very good.
Oh, and also, who's the guy? I can't remember the name of the actor who plays the general. Fantastic job.
Oh,
the acting continues to be great all around, which was true the first season as well. It's kind of a silly show. I mean, I think, and I love that they're kind of burning their bridge back to the books. And I wonder who is left to watch it, unless it's just people like me who like Jared Harris and Lee Pace.
So I believe you're referring to Ben Daniels, who plays Bel Rios. That is the general. Yeah.
Readers will recognize that name.
Yes. I want to give a shout out to my new girlfriend, Ella Ray Smith, who plays Queen Sereth.
Oh,
I gotta say, like, again,
I wouldn't kick her out of my bed either.
Thank you, Anna. Like, that's, but leave it this way. Again, it's good acting because, let's be blunt, she's not given a ton to do.
Right.
She has to look super hot. That is clearly obvious, but she does more with that role than I would have expected. And, so she's not just hot, she's talented.
Yeah. I mean, she has to code switch a fair amount.
Yeah.
And does that really well and plays both the kind of dim version of herself.
She knows how to play I apologize if this word is offensive. She plays the bimbo well, but she also plays the knowing one well. And so, like, it's a good... and also it's much more subtle than we're saying. It's like it's extremely well done. And also, whoever clothes her, like, the costuming on her is fantastic. It is.
And the makeup. Yeah. Like, I love the whole... we were talking about how gorgeous it is.
Yeah.
And I do think one thing that they do that Asimov just didn't care about was really think through what the different, like, cultures look like and feel like and how they dress and what would be different. Mm-hmm. And I love that they've made this culture just have an affinity for color.
Right. Which totally makes sense.
Like,
yeah.
They just, they put color into everything and their makeup goes around their whole face. And it's beautiful.
I want to add that I agree with you on Bel Rios, by the way. I particularly like the decision. I don't know. I assume this was not in the books, but it turns out that we discover, among other things, Bel Rios was this formerly, incredibly heroic general who, by not listening to Day, winds up getting put in a penal colony. When he's finally freed, he learns that his spouse thought that he was dead. And again, it was like a nice, well done thing where it turns out his spouse is a man. And, like, the relationship is really quite affectionate and tender and just not commented on. We've talked about this before.
You love it when the representation just is.
I like it when the representation just is. And this is a case where I think that was entirely appropriate because you would expect 10,000 years in the future, they would be totally fine with that. So that's incredibly well done.
It is a lovely little relationship because it's also a little complicated.
Well, there's work-life stuff. And that, again, which would be, if it would be true if there was a heterosexual relationship. So, like, it's again, extremely well handled. I think I like this season a little bit better than the first season. And I think the primary reason is that there is way less IR in this season.
What about Sarah, Dan? That's like alliances and diplomacy.
Sure, but that's just conventional meat and potatoes IR. I have no problem with that. It's not terribly interesting. But the first season with the whole psychohistory bullshit, and like the building of like, and also, again, I will never forgive this show for when Hari Seldon, emerges from the vault to solve a centuries-long, interplanetary conflict with a 5-minute speech. That is not how life works. And I think that is actually I think it, in the end, is the fundamental thing that causes me to never fully embrace this show, because they can't obviously depart from the psychohistory stuff too much, but it's bullshit, Anna.
Well, I agree. It's total bullshit. And once you make the decision to treat it as magic, like, it's fine. Like, it's totally fine because it is just magic.
And to be fair, by the way, that actually, I liked what Asimov did. Like, and this was the theme that from the first season as well, the sort of science, is the sort of science religion question in terms of faith and so forth. That's fine. But they don't press on that point too much, which is the right way to go, is the way I would put it. Because if they try to press too much on it, they're not going to have good, deep thoughts on it.
And again, I would argue what is represented in the book and in the TV show is not science. Yeah. They call it science, fair. But it's magic.
Yes. No, that's point taken on that. Yes. So, like, again, it's been enjoyable. I've enjoyed it, but, not...
Let's move on, Dan. Let's move on to something we both enjoy.
Oh, yes. Let's move on to something... And listeners, we're going to apologize here because... We had some aspirations we didn't quite get to, but, you're listening to this after having heard our, Meg podcast, The Meg, and then we did Meg 2, The Trench. And as a joke, we were going to put a special episode in between for Megan, M3GAN, which is, by the way, by far the best.
Which is a great idea.
Yes, good idea. That it was Hannah's idea. And also, by the way, the best of those three films by far, even though it costs the least amount of money. And is really just a credit to Blumhouse in terms of like, you know, how they do nasty little horror films. But Anna, I was like pleasantly surprised by this. Because I mean, what I'd heard about this film when it came out was that it, you know, audiences liked it. I heard that like a lot of people thought it was really silly. This isn't a silly movie. This is actually a really good, tight little film, I thought.
And it's funny that, I guess, and it's okay for parents.
Yeah. Oh, this is easily okay for parents. Yeah.
I found it actually almost a little bit moving at times. Yeah. I mean, like it evokes grief in a really serious way, and then it's a very silly movie.
Yeah,
and that's fine.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
like it gives you the underlying issue that you have to deal with grief, and there are good ways and bad ways to deal with grief, and then it gives you a hilariously bad way of dealing with grief.
God. Like, so first of all, I have to add, like, the movie, like, literally, like, comes out firing on all cylinders, because the opening sequence of that film is a horrible commercial for, like, a fake furry thing, like, you know, like a pet. But the premise is, your real pets will die, but this one will never die, so you don't have to ever explain death to your children. Why don't you buy this?
Right.
And I just laughed my ass off. It was a great way of dealing with it.
So it has this. So you get a real you get a fairly well done, pretty serious introduction into this poor child who has been orphaned,
who loses both of her parents, right? Yeah, and then
both of her parents, and then you get her aunt,
who is the worst human ever.
Terrible person. A terrible person.
The worst person. Like,
that's not really paid enough attention to what a terrible person she is.
Well, let me this way.
And because it's Allison Williams,
she gets away with
think of it,
right? But like,
you don't think about it right away. You're like, oh, she's so pretty and she's so smart.
Right, but I'm going to add that's odd because she has previously played the worst person in a film, you know, and she's actually talked about this. How in Get Out. You know, spoiler, you know, she is
spoiler if you haven't
seen it. Yeah, she's the bad guy in Get Out. And I you know, she's been on interviews and on talk shows where she said that people have come up to her and actually said, but you really love him, right? Like you actually didn't want, and like they can't believe she was actually evil in that, you know, and this is a slightly different movie because in the end she does learn some redemption and so on and so forth. But for the first 2/3 of this film, she is a horrible human being. Like, just the worst.
You know, as we have established, I don't like kids, Dan. And I would not behave like her.
No.
Like, I think if I had suddenly had custody of a child of a loved one of mine,
right,
I think I would take my fucking headphones off every once in a while.
Well,
right?
The other part,
like, and because she's bad in two ways, right? Like she's bad in that she just literally just ignores the girl, right? Just like neglects.
Right. She's just obsessed with work. Yeah. And says, oh, go ahead, play on your screen. I don't care. That, by the way, I will say as a parent, that was, I love that little moment because it's like, that's the difference between a parent and someone who doesn't give a shit.
Yeah. And then the other thing she does is give her this doll.
Yes. Which, right. So that,
which only a idiot or only an insane person would think is a good idea, right?
True.
Like, and she does it. Like, it actually, the logic of the movie is really great.
No, to be fair, like
because she does it
in an effort to bring her out of her grief,
and not have to do it herself.
Exactly. Yes.
To not have to do the hard work of addressing grief.
This is all about a character who doesn't want to do the work, or at least that kind of work.
Yep.
She's clearly willing to build a doll. And also, again, I want to give credit. This is where I was curious what you thought about this. The thing the film does remarkably well, and I don't know if they knew this in advance, but like the Megan doll so perfectly captures the uncanny valley between between human and doll that it is innately creepy. And the other thing that I think they did that was incredibly smart is some of this film, you know, the way they do it is there was a child actress played by Annie Donald, I think, and then they sort of put some CGI eyes on her. But a lot of this, I think, they actually have a real doll. And that was smart, because the real doll is fucking creepy. just innately. And so it winds up leading to a significant amount of dread, at least when I was watching the film. Anytime Megan was on the screen where I knew it was like clearly the doll, it just freaked me out.
Yeah. It's actually good.
Yeah, no,
like that's the thing. I think what we're
good.
saying
it is
it's
good.
Not bad good.
Right, like
it is good.
I read some critics who thought of it as like bad good. No, this is actually a great film. I'm not kidding. Like it brings up some interesting themes. It knows what it's trying to do with them. You know, it among other things, I do think, I know you don't like kids, but Violet McGraw, who plays Katie,
no,
she's great in this. And like the most affecting scene actually, I think, is when, and it's an interesting scene because it's disturbing in retrospect, is when they're doing the big test for the board, and Katie has been like brought in, and she's clearly, she just cries. She just starts crying, and it's a very moving, effective scene. And Megan actually is able to comfort her, and so it gives some sort of like motivation for why Megan actually winds up behaving the way she does in the second half of the film. It's a very well done movie, and also tightly done.
And there is a critique of capitalism.
Oh God, yes. Oh yes, yes. Also, good use of Ronnie Cheng as the CEO. You know, great use of him.
Yeah.
And also, the other things I liked about it, again, not subtle but clever, is how, you know, particularly in the last 15 minutes of the film, Megan becomes less and less human looking as they fight. Yeah. Like she starts looking more like Chucky, and then like just like a doll. But, and also, I'm just going to add, again, we need to praise movies that do this. This movie is only, I think, 100 minutes long. It is a short film, and it should not have been longer, to be clear. Perfectly well done as a short film. Well done on that. I would also recommend, by the way, because it's available on Amazon Prime now, watch the unrated cut. Don't watch the theatrical cut.
I watched the unrated one, but what's the difference?
The difference is, there's two differences, but they're big differences in my opinion. The first is that in the unrated cut, Megan actually swears at one point. She says fucking, if you remember. And that actually worked. Like, there's a moment where she says that, I was like, whoa, okay, this is, like, you're thinking it's dark, and then it goes a little darker.
That doll is serious. Yes. Yeah.
The second thing they changed is that the scene where Megan kills Ronnie Cheng and his assistant, that is incredibly gore. You know, it's pretty bloody in the version you watch. Apparently, in the theatrical release, you barely see anything. There's no blood in that.
Yeah.
And like that scene needs to be gory, I think, for it to work. Oh, and
I think so too.
Yeah, I had one last thought about this.
I was just going to say...
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go.
Okay. I was just going to say, so the critique of capitalism, obviously, is that, you know, the exploitation of grief and, like, you know, trying to solve death with products, which we do anyway.
By the way, did you like the sequence, though, where the kids said, where like, Allison Williams says, yeah, this would be really expensive, you know, like, that's the problem. And she says, if I had this toy, I wouldn't want any other toy. And you see Allison Williams' eyes like light up, like capitalism is awesome, you know, and so forth. It was good.
Although it is, well, do you want a product that someone doesn't want would make them not buy anything else?
Probably not. But like it was in the context of the film, I think
anyway,
it was.
What I was going to say, what really the most deft, I think, kind of critique of capitalism moment is actually when the board watches Megan comfort the girl. Yeah. And they're like, awesome, you know, like.
Yes. Yes.
And they just see like dollar signs. Like that's how they see it.
No, I agree. You know,
it's a good scene.
One last thing I want to say about Megan. Again, I highly recommend it. And I will say that I think the producers of the Meg franchise should watch this film. I'm not joking about this, because the thing that I'm serious about this. Megan has, it's not just a good film, it has an appropriate nasty streak given the content. And I think the producers of the Meg need a slightly nastier streak making those films. And like Megan, actually, I think like that's exactly the right level to pitch to. So I would leave it at that.
All right. Next, Dan, something also we both liked.
Yes.
Both liked very much.
Yes.
And we've talked about before a little bit.
We have, but we need to talk about season 2 of Strange New Worlds, Star Trek Strange New Worlds. On it, this was just, I thought, an utter delight, I have to say. I enjoyed the entire season. What say you on this?
Utter delight, yeah. Anson Mount is as good as his hair. Like I don't.
Wow, that is really high praise. Very high praise.
I know. Yeah. His hair is extraordinary, and he is too. All of the acting is great. I'm gonna give you credit for making this analogy first, which is that the show that it reminds me the most of is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Yeah. I think it's that good. I mean, I don't know if it's going to get the same kind of following or be the same kind of cultural phenomenon.
Right. Well, I don't think it can be, to be fair, because Buffy had a young female protagonist in a way that was kind of unique at that point. And so, yeah. But artistically, Buffy, I think Buffy's a little funnier, but like beyond that, this show, the impressive thing about this show is the range of episodes it delivered this season, in which it was tonally shifting from things like, let's explore the PTSD that comes with war, to let's put on a musical. And it actually pulled both of those off, which a lot of I can't think of any other show on television that would be able to have done that. And also a crossover with an animated show, the Lower Decks episode, which again, incredibly well done.
They took a ton of risks, and all those risks paid off.
Exactly.
And I think it's a testament to, I think the acting and the writing are amazing. And go ahead. We're just talking over each other a lot.
I'm sorry. Well, we're enthusiastic about this. We don't have
a script.
Yes, exactly. Yes. But the way I would put it is that the thing that made this season, I think, interesting is that by and large, the leads are Anson Mount and Rebecca Romijn. They actually take they're more in the background this season. There are other characters, like Uhura has a whole arc.
Sometimes literally.
Yes, exactly. But like Uhura has a whole arc. Spock and Chapel definitely have a whole thing going on. We see Ortegas a little more. Even Kirk, is a recurring character in this. And Leon Noonien Singh. But what's impressive about that is Mount and Romijn are always good when they're on screen. And it's like they literally are the best supporting actors, in the sense of just having them there anchors the whole show and allows all of these other actors to do what they need to do, which allowed them to like really stretch in ways that we hadn't seen before. And so I'm honestly, a lot of Star Treks, when they first start off, they don't, the first season could be clunky or whatever. The first season of that show was not clunky. I think maybe because some of the characters had like a running start from Discovery, but really I'm impressed by this second season, and I want the goddamn strike to end so they can start making the third one, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out to Anson Mount's particular comedy chops.
Oh yeah.
I think he might be the best at that.
Yeah.
I mean, what is cool about him in this role is he does, of all the captains we've had, he does resemble Kirk the most, and that's fitting in the timeline of the show,
right? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Not just because he's Pike, but because I think if you look at it sort of a generation, the way that gender roles evolved in the show timeline, right? So you're going to get kind of a macho captain, but he is so much better than, like, I love the original series. That's what made me as a fan, all that. But, Shatner.
It's not just, it's unfair to blame that on Shatner.
Generous.
Yeah.
Not a very generous sort of role. Right. Yeah. I don't blame it on Shatner. You're right.
Yeah.
Although he does what he's supposed to do really, really well. That's one of the reasons it's such a great show, right? Is he plays that macho guy very well. But Anson Mount has a tenderness to him.
A vulnerability to him.
A vulnerability to him. And that makes the comedy better. And that makes, when he does go into captain mode, it makes it less grating. And it makes him, you can see why people follow him. And Rebecca Romijn, you're right. She makes everybody better too. Yeah. And then also the vibe that they have together, you totally believe it. And also, I love a good, non-sexual chemistry in
non-sexual heterosexual chemistry, like man woman.
Yes,
but
I like that.
I
love that.
To use the "how to get this get made" phrase, it's a man woman scene, but there's no sex in it, and there's no sexual tension, which is good.
It's a man woman scene, but there's no sex in it. That's right. I believe the word I was looking for was platonic.
There we go. Yes.
But and just that level of chemistry, without any romance, is, I think, pretty rare.
It is rare, and
they have great chemistry.
It's extremely well done. I want to give particularly a shout out to Rebecca Romijn for two scenes in this season, which I thought were really good. The first is during the Lower Decks episode, where she finds out she's on the poster, and she's like, "Do you mean like a pinup?" And the way she phrased that, and it's also a good meta moment because it's Rebecca Romijn.
Because it's Rebecca, because it's Rebecca Romijn.
But that, if that was a moment of fan servicing, fine, I was serviced, because it was just it's an incredibly well done scene. And then even in the musical episode, at the very beginning, where La'an is in the transporter and they're beaming Kirk over, and she says to La'an, "You've got some heat coming off you." Like she could tell that there was something going on with La'an and Kirk, even though for timeline reasons, you wouldn't have necessarily known that. Again, just done delightfully well.
I think Lahan and Kirk is my favorite development of this season.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'm so bad with names in general. The actor that plays James Tiberius
Paul
Kirk,
Wesley. Paul Wesley.
Way too skinny. Way too skinny. Incredibly too skinny.
Remember, this is 7 years before like the original series is supposed to start. So like one can assume
it was just maybe unbelievably
maybe
skinny.
He was hitting the replicator hard. And then Christina Chong plays La'an, and she's also really good. I also, by the way, the musical episode. There were so many. It's weird. I think there are some people I think that don't like this episode, and I'm honestly stunned as to why. Because if you don't like musicals, that's fine. But this was actually a great musical. In addition to being the songs were pretty good, and they were smart in terms of who they had like belting out things as opposed to not. So, for example, they have, I think, Celia Rose Gooding plays Uhura. She was a Grammy winner. She's got the chops. She has a great solo performance. Christina Chong also has a great solo. Those are good.
Oh my God.
Oh, that
I think hers might be the one that was the most surprising and maybe my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. But they also have good ensemble numbers. The first one where like Spock starts singing and it's like, I think the title was Apologies. It's a lovely little, thing. It's not fancy, but it's incredibly well done. And then Jess Bush, who plays Chapel, her number where she gets the fellowship. Like they were smart because she sings almost like breathily in that one. It's almost like a Marilyn Monroe style kind of singing because she doesn't necessarily have a great voice, but it works. And it's much more a dance number than it is a singing number, but it works incredibly well.
I was going to say that's their show number.
Exactly.
That's their show choir.
Yeah.
Number.
But
I liked that.
It worked really well. And also there was a small moment in that one. I don't know if you caught this where they're all dancing and Ortegas is like sort of boogieing around. And then a taller woman is the one who lifts her up. And there was like clearly a little moment of heat between the two of them, which was very funny.
Sometimes representation needs to be called out a little bit.
Yeah, I could have been called out a little more. Yeah.
One thing I think that they have just made Ortega. They haven't tried to like code her in a particular way. No. Yeah, she has sort of a butchy kind of look, but like
we actually have I don't think we know anything about what her personal preferences are, which is fine. Like
and that's totally fine because most of the time we don't. With people we work with, we just like work with them.
Yeah.
Speaking of people we work with,
yes.
Let's go to the last thing on our
list. Okay. What do you got on them?
It's Lower Decks, Dan.
Yay!
You tried to turn me onto the show maybe even like a year ago. I don't remember. And I was like, I watched an episode and I was like, this is boring. I don't care. And then I was in a funk a few weeks back and needed something. I've already done my Office rewatch like 5 times in the past 3 years. That's not true. I've done it twice in the past 3 years. And, I was like, let's try Lower Decks. That seems like a low stakes thing to watch. And it is low stakes and it's totally endearing. Yes. And it's a good sitcom. It's a good workplace sitcom. Like it is. I think I have a weird bias against like animated things for adults.
And this is definitely for adults, just to be clear. I mean, like it's for teenagers as well. Yeah. This also is. I've said this before. It is straight up the horniest Star Trek show of all of them.
Yes, it is. Yeah. But it's good. And what's his face is very good.
Jack Quaid.
He's also in The Boys.
Jack Quaid, who plays Boimler.
Oh my God! Someday we should talk about The Boys, which I did enjoy.
We should, but that requires me watching the next couple seasons, and I'm scared of that. The first season was good, but like I just it's so goddamn dark. But yes,
it's dark. Yeah. It is very dark, and it shows some range because he's not dark in this one.
No,
but he's totally adorable, and all the voice acting is great. I did. Oh, you know what it was? I did watch the crossover episode, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to give Lower Decks another chance because I enjoyed this crossover episode so much. And it was the right thing to do. I mean, I can't tell you anything that I, like some favorite lines or favorite scenes. It's just like a great group of people that you like hanging out with. Sort of like The Office, like a great group. It's like, it's a familiar group of people who their personalities intersect in an interesting way. and they get up to some crazy hijinks. It's a sitcom. It's a workplace sitcom.
So the way I would put it is that, first of all, I'm glad to hear that you really liked it, because again, I was pushing for you to watch it, and I agree with you. The voice acting is extremely good. Tawny Newsome plays Mariner. Dawn Wells plays Tendi. They're great. I think there are two things that make that show really pop. There are a bunch of scenes that I remember, mostly the really weird ones. Like there's a scene in the second season involving Mugatu sex that had me dying, just utterly dying. And I think that's part of I think this show has two things that make it really work well. The first is that what it knows what to do is to mine the sillier aspects of Star Trek. Like it has borrowed from all of the other series the really almost silliest like characters or silliest plot lines. So like it used the Exo comps from Next Generation or the Mugatu from the original series, and like has no problem playing with those. It knows the sandbox it's in, and it does a great job with that. And so I will say this. I think the enjoyment of that show is only enhanced the more Star Trek lore you know, because there's a lot of in-jokes in the show. And particularly the sort of 90s shows, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. It likes to plumb the depths of those.
It's also, like The Office, it is pretty cynical, which I like too.
So this is the second thing, though. It's cynical, but it has... The other thing it has, though, is this optimism, I guess would be the way to put it, about being in Starfleet.
Fits into the Star Trek, and it fits into the Star Trek.
And this is where I think Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks, I think that's the reason why the crossover episode worked so well, is that the one thing that the shows have in common, they don't have a lot in common, but one of the things they do have in common is they are both, in the end, optimistic about what Starfleet can do, for lack of a better way of putting it. You know, they're the anti-Andors, but in a good way. And like my favorite character on Lower Decks, hands down, is Tendi. And part of the reason I love Tendi is because she's this Orion who is trying to bust the stereotype of what you think Orions are supposed to do. And so she's like super optimistic. She's a science nerd. She's an engineering nerd. And she is boundlessly optimistic. I take it you like the episode where she created the dog?
I did like that episode. I think also the episode, but I was going to say the episode I think I might like the most is a weirder one, and I'm going to forget the name of the character that's the toaster oven that goes to the planet of the like winged thing.
Oh, this is Peanut Hamper. Yes, the exocomp. Exocomp Peanut Hamper. Yes. Where again, by the way, really funny sex scene in that episode.
Yeah. Hilarious sex scene. Yes. I thought of Annalee Newman.
There you go. Yeah.
And it's a pretty also dark episode. It's a cynical episode. It's a dark episode in some ways, but also ultimately, yes.
Starfleet does the right thing in the end. Yes.
Starfleet does the right thing. Yeah. And also that character's right. Your name is Peanut Hamper, and she's a coward.
Yes.
And she's a terrible
entity or terrible consciousness.
Terrible toaster oven. Yes.
I also like. I think that is their special sauce, because a lot of the plots for the seasons have been AI gone bad, or like artificial intelligence gone bad. Because there's a couple episodes with Badgie, voiced by Jack McBrayer.
Oh yeah.
Which are pretty funny as well. So, and then also I think my favorite, the sequence I think I've laughed the hardest at was, I think this was in the last episode of the third season, where they're trying to figure out what to do against the sentient computer who's got the ship. And the security guy says, "Let's eject the warp core," and everyone dismisses him. And then Boimler says, No, that actually is the thing we want to do this time, because he suggests it for every situation.
Yeah.
You're right. Eject the warp core, and everyone is like giving him high fives because Jax finally gets to do what he had been suggesting for years. And it was again just a well-earned character moment that they made silly, and it was great that way.
So Dan, we've reached the end of what we did with our summer vacation. Do we have anything we're looking forward to? I have thing I was looking forward to that now we have bad news, which is Dune's getting delayed till next year.
Let me put it this way. You want to know what I'm looking forward to? I'm looking forward to the strikes getting resolved, because this is clearly,
yes.
Let's be honest here. What we're now seeing.
Is there a critique of capitalism in this?
The studios are clearly
in this timeline.
The studios are starting to ration out what they've got in the can, and I'm maybe that makes me weirdly optimistic that they're realizing, oh damn, we actually need to there's going to be a point where they run out of stuff, and I assume they think they're going to break the union before that.
Maybe CGI actors aren't the answer after all, right? Maybe we should just pay the ones that are live and breathing and stuff.
So I'm hopeful for that then. I am also looking forward to, we're going to have an episode on this when it comes out. The Creator. This is it was made by the director of Rogue One, Gareth Edwards. It's got a pretty good cast. John David Washington,
and
Gemma
I'm
Chan.
Sure, I know I saw the
it was the trailer with the trailer with the Aerosmith Dream On song was on it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. That looks amazing. Maybe it's because I keep seeing the trailer in the big screen, but it looks really goddamn good. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm also kind of looking forward to, and I didn't think I would say this, Rebel Moon, which is the Zack Snyder thing.
Yeah.
Like the trailer for that just dropped. I'm kind of intrigued by that.
The Discord seems intrigued by it as well. So sure, I'll take a look.
Yeah. I'm worried in the end it'll be Snyder to death, but that was whatever.
Well,
listeners, I regret to inform you that Zack Snyder is putting Anna to sleep.
What I was going to say is that the thing that we have discovered about Zack Snyder is that he is the person that has the vision, and that if nothing else in his movies, like, you're going to get a vision. Yeah. You may not like that vision. It may be a terrible vision.
But at least he knows what he actually does know what he's doing. The question is whether we all agree with him. But he knows what he's doing. And so
or we want to see the thing he's
doing. I want to see the thing he's doing. I might not like it, and but he's interesting enough so that I want to give it a whirl. So yeah. Fair enough.
I was really looking forward to Dune. Damn it, Dune 2, I guess.
Well, it will come out eventually. Really, I mean, it's not like they're not.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's just. I'm gonna have to rewatch the first one. I haven't, because I kind of was like gonna wait until the 2, and I was gonna do a rewatch of 1, right before 2. But it's so gorgeous. Yeah. It's just so beautiful and so fully imagined that it's the kind of movie that I just get excited to be in a theater for.
Right, exactly.
And excited to be taken to that place. Yeah. And there's not a lot I get excited to be in a theater for, and to be transported.
Let me put it this way. This is another thing where I'm optimistic, because again, we didn't talk about this and maybe we'll do another episode in the future about this. But one of the things I legitimately enjoyed this summer was Barbenheimer. And by that, I mean not just the films Barbie and Oppenheimer, but actually the experience of going to see them in the movie theater, which was lovely. And they were 2 very different films, both good, both interesting. And maybe this will encourage people.
Did I miss my chance to see them in theaters at all?
No, I think they're still doing pretty well. You should go see them this week, though, Anna. I mean, like, I'm not kidding about that.
Okay.
Yeah. But
I want to do that. I think it was something that started out as a stunt, obviously, but is, I think, an interesting kind of lens.
Yeah. I think it was counter-programming. It made sense that those 2 movies would be released on the same day because they are extremely different films. But they're both really nice to look at. They both have interesting things to say. I think Barbie's a little bit more of a mess than Oppenheimer, but there are also ways in which Barbie is more interesting. So, let me put it this way. I want you to watch them, Anna, so we can talk about them in a future episode.
I'm aware that there's a critique of capitalism.
Oh, just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, that is the whole reason we do this show. Yeah. Dan, is just basically like, we just wanted to talk to each other about stuff, about things that we liked and things that we didn't like also.
But we hope you, the listeners, also had a great, summer of 2023. And we are looking forward, with the fall of getting a little more serious and looking at a little more serious stuff.
Yeah, really? Oh, we'll do silly stuff.
We'll do some silly stuff too, though. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But yes, until next time.
Keep this channel open for more.